What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling, and we're doing a bit of a commentary today because over the past couple of years we have seen pretty much a big bloat in the number of wrestlers in the pro wrestling world, especially in the West, North America and the UK. And it really begs the question, are there just too many wrestlers and there's not enough time for all of these wrestlers? Should we have more wrestling shows? Do we need more wrestling companies? Or is it just a natural progression that the cream will rise to the top and there just isn't enough time and room for everybody? We're going to kind of look at it today from my perspective as a wrestling fan. But before we get into that, I want to remind you guys that you can help other people recognize this video by hitting that like button, you know, the one down in the description box below that every single YouTuber tells you to hit on their videos. But if you find that this video is entertaining or you are enjoying it, please hit the like button. It helps the YouTube algorithm let other wrestling fans know about this video. I appreciate it very much. It does help out. And now let's get into this discussion as to whether or not there are just too many wrestlers today. Go back about 2 or 3 years from the date of this recording, and we remember when WWE seemed bloated as hell, and that was even with them having a SmackDown roster, an NXT roster, a 205 roster, a Monday Night Raw roster, an NXT UK roster, and even with all of those rosters in somewhat separate shows, it still felt like they had way too many wrestlers for the TV time that they had. And you're talking about 3 hours on Monday nights for Raw, 2 hours for SmackDown, 1 to 2 hours for NXT, an hour for NXT UK, an hour for 205 Live. And there were just so many people, that high profile guys that had a lot of potential, that were big names in other places, and people were excited to see them in WWE, like EC3, Karrion Kross before the Triple H regime, many more like that, just seemed to be wasted on the WWE roster. Things seemed to liven up a little bit though in 2019 and 2020 when AEW fully established itself as a second tier wrestling company, another major league wrestling company in the United States that could draw a lot of audience as far as this arena attendance and also a lot of viewers on television, and generated enough revenue to have a healthy roster of stars, being backed by a billionaire in Tony Khan. But now we entered 2022, and then AEW started to seem a little bit too bloated. And you had guys like Andrade El Idolo and Malachi Black and Buddy Matthews and on and on and on, who just seemed like they should have been bigger stars but just weren't getting that exposure that they should have. Even to the point where, you know, somebody like Cody Rhodes, who was one of the founders of the company, left the company because, quite honestly, there wasn't much else for him to do or anywhere else for him to go creatively within the company. Now we're here in October, and there's rumors about CM Punk leaving the company, the Elite leaving the company, Kenny Omega leaving the company. Andrade El Idolo has a match coming up on Friday's Rampage on the 7th of October, where it's rumored that he might be on his way out of the company, and that might be his last match. Rumors about Malachi Black, rumors about Adam Cole, rumors about Miro. Where has Miro been? He shows up for a couple weeks, then disappears for a couple months, and comes back for a couple weeks and disappears for a couple of months. And it just doesn't seem that there's enough time for all these guys. Although, in the case of AEW, to play devil's advocate and the other side of the fence on that, there is time for all of these guys. And Rampage tends to be filled with mid-carders. And it seems like you could probably fill that spot with Miro and the House of Black and give them some storylines on those shows instead of featuring your mid-card guys on Rampage. But you also have to balance that out with creating new stars, because if you spend so much time and all of your time promoting established stars, you're not building any new stars, and there's a balance that needs to be struck there, and a lot of people don't think either WWE or AEW do a great job in balancing that out. Now, the third most popular wrestling company in the world, New Japan Pro Wrestling, they have a bit of a different issue over there, where the pandemic era kind of limited their roster to just a handful of guys, where they just kept repeating the same matches over and over and over again with the same core group of guys, because New Japan's strategy is to have that core group of guys but always bring in other people from other companies to kind of fill out the cards and get fresh matchups. So there's their core group, and then the the thing is to see guys from, whether it was Ring of Honor or TNA back in the day, or even way back in the day. They did bring guys in from the WWF back in the day. And even now today with AEW, which has been very limited with the guys, in fact, very few. Lance Archer is the only one. There's a lot of flexibility with that. But again, the downside of that was the fact that because of the pandemic, they were limited to probably like 20, 25 guys that they had to keep recycling in matches that we had seen over and over again over the course of 2 years. And New Japan would seem like a viable option for some people, but then again, a 15-hour flight every month might be a bit much for some guys, and maybe everybody doesn't want to go over to Japan, as Booker T loves to talk about all the time on his podcast. But again, guys like AJ Styles and Prince Devitt, aka Finn Balor, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Ricochet, so on and so forth, up and down the line. A lot of guys you see on major wrestling companies today made that trek, made those 15-hour flights, did those 1-month tours, stayed in Japan for 2 to 3 weeks, came back home, would go back and do the 15-hour flights again and do another tour the next month, and made a decent living out of it, and then eventually got their name up to be big enough in the States where AJ and Finn Balor became mainstays in World Wrestling Entertainment. Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson have been able to go everywhere with their famous success, and of course Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks and Hangman Page were able to parlay that into being the Elite, which then of course led on to All Elite Wrestling. But right now, even with Triple H running WWE and WWE releasing a lot of people over the last couple of years, there is still kind of the thought that now that Triple H is bringing in and bringing back a lot of people that were released or left WWE over the last couple of years under Vince McMahon, that there is a problem that potentially WWE could become overbloated again. And that is a problem maybe a year down the road that we're going to see, even with Triple H, even with all that TV time, even though he's a better booker for the modern audience than I would say Vince McMahon would be, you're still probably going to run into the issue of having too many people who are very talented and are being underutilized. And this is not even counting MLW, the NWA, Impact Wrestling, all these other places where there are definitely named wrestlers who are very talented, have name value, that are in those promotions and are, you know, still finding those promotions being overloaded. And then you've got the new talent that's trying to rise up underneath all of this, and there may be a breaking point at some point in the future, in the very near future, for having all of these wrestlers and all of this talent and everybody thinking all of these wrestlers deserve a spot or at least a shot to be number one in one of the major league companies. But here's the unfortunate truth behind it, is that that's just not going to happen. There just aren't enough spots, there aren't enough hours, and the wrestling audience, even though it's a significant audience on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and I always advocate that wrestling should be like every other entertainment field where you should have multiple shows on. But we do have multiple shows on. We have multiple wrestling shows on. We have about as many wrestling shows as there are like talent shows, as there are reality shows, as there are gaming shows. We have a same amount of them as any of those other TV enterprises, those TV niches, those TV genres are out there. And again, much like those shows, there's only so many hours in a day, there's only so many channels, and there's only so many people who are going to watch that much wrestling every single week. It'd be kind of different too if WWE didn't suck up so much of the time, but then again, they draw the most eyeballs, so they're going to suck up most of the time. It would be kind of nice to see a third promotion kind of rise up to the national stage. Yes, you have Impact. Yes, you have MLW. Yes, you have the NWA, but their numbers are not close to what AEW and WWE's are. So we're in a bit of a conundrum right now with a embarrassment of riches when it comes to talented in-ring wrestlers, talented character wrestlers, and just not enough time for all these people. And this is why it is absolutely important for AEW to succeed and absolutely important for WWE to continue to succeed, because both of those companies, you kind of need two. I would like to have three, but two is good enough, because say if an Andrade El Idolo is not happy in AEW, well, he can go to WWE and get a fresh run there for 2 or 3 years. If he fizzles out there, he can go back to AEW and have a fresh run there for a year or two. You know, this is not a new thing either. Wrestlers used to do this all the time back in the day. Ravishing Rude was famous from going from company to company. So was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Plenty of other wrestlers company hopped, when they felt stale or there was no creative or they had problems with certain people in the locker room or problems with management at the company that they were at, they could go to the AWA, they could go to the WWF, they could go to Stampede, they could go to World Class Championship Wrestling, they could go to Japan, they could go to Mexico. We have kind of that environment almost back to where it was right now in the world of pro wrestling and sports entertainment, and along with the UK, which I don't know because WWE Europe is about to start, so who knows what's going to go on over there. But a lot of American wrestlers who are finding that maybe WWE's main roster and AEW's main roster might not have any spots for them, might think about going to the UK and being part of WWE Europe, or maybe going down to Mexico and doing a year or two there, or again going to Japan, as has been the case, which has worked out, like I mentioned before, tremendously well for a lot of wrestlers to go over there for 2 years. So there's a lot of options out there, but I do think that we are reaching kind of a breaking point with the number of wrestlers who have talent that fans want to see pushed that are not being pushed on these main rosters. This is all going to sort itself out one way or another. It's bound to happen, but I think that's probably going to be the story going forward for the next couple of years in the world of sports entertainment and pro wrestling. But I want to know what you guys think about this topic. Do you think there's just too many wrestlers? Do you think there's just not enough TV time? Do you think we need a third national company, or do we already have too many national TV wrestling shows on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays as it is? Let your voice be heard in the comment box below and give me your solution to what you think we can do with having so much talent but just not enough time and not enough places for them to perform at. Let your voice be heard. I will see you guys pretty soon here for more news, rumors, and commentary right here on the Rant and Review Pro Wrestling. Have a good day.